This is Nick, by the way, who wrote the book Pirates, Punks and Politics. So I decided just to read his stuff from Amazon to describe the book. But first I'll say a bit about the author. Just in case you're wondering, Nick isn't 45, he's only 41. This is his fourth book about football, vaguely. Since 2007, he's been travelling regularly to Germany to watch FC St. Pauli play. During that time, he's gone from an interested outsider to an active member of the club's fanzine. FC St. Pauli, the football club in the red light district of Hamburg. A transvestite chairman.
You're just reading it out.
I am, yeah. I couldn't tell the story of mojitos and booking into a hotel at 2 AM and not having any rooms left. It's too inappropriate. A transvestite chairman, terraces populated by punks, pimps and prostitutes, a club run by anarchists, united under the skull and crossbones flag. This is the cliche that has been lazily peddled, Nick's words, not mine, one which attracts clueless stag parties from the Reeperbahn to the Millerntor Stadium. I'll put this disclaimer in there, Nick, and say we do meet some nice stag parties.
We did meet some nice stag parties, didn't we? Yeah.
But it's not the real St. Pauli. In Pirates, Punks and Politics, author Nick Davidson puts the record straight, intermingling the history of FC St. Pauli and the district it represents with an account of his own involvement with the club, not development with the club. Have you developed with the club, Nick? No, just being involved. Back in 2007, Davidson, I like that. No, Nick, just Davidson.
I didn't write this, by the way.
Davidson travelled with his father to watch his first game at the Millerntor. How did that conversation go? Did you just say, Dad, fancy a trip to Germany to...
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
He spoke in a comedy German accent for the entire trip. Slightly embarrassing.
And you've never looked back since?
No, I've never taken him back since.
What he found reinforced his faith in football. This book goes beyond the stereotype to seek out the real St. Pauli, a club with a passionate, left-wing fan base that has made a stand against fascism, racism, sexism, and both in football and wider society. As the author and countless others have discovered, the Millerntor is also a place which welcomes with open arms fans seeking an alternative to the rabid commercialisation of football elsewhere, encouraging them to stay for hours after the final whistle and immerse themselves in the vibrant fan culture. Read this book and fall in love with Nick's hair. No, sorry, fall in love with a different kind of football. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Davidson.
To think I could have just read it off the internet rather than on this piece of paper. First of all, thank you to everybody for turning up, and thanks to Scott and the rest of Yorkshire St. Pauli for organising this. Meeting these guys has been amazing. We've had some good, like Scott alluded to, we've had some good times going over and watching games over there for the last 4 or 5 years. What I just wanted to do tonight, really, I'll try and keep it reasonably brief, is just say about how the book came about. What I wanted to do with the book was just write something in English that kind of fleshed out, if you like, a lot of the cliches and the myths that... to be perfectly honest, I first found out about St. Pauli. I picked up a copy of 442 about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe even longer than that. And there was an article in there, and it went through all of those cliches. It went through the bit about we have supposedly the transvestite chairman, the fact that the terraces are completely populated by, you know, punks, pimps and prostitutes, all of that kind of stuff. And it's a myth, it's a cliche. There's some truth to it in there somewhere. So what I wanted to do was just try and... There's so much good stuff in German and so little in English that I just wanted to kind of flesh it out a little bit and just have that story told in English. So, you know, hopefully people can read about it. Maybe, you know, if 3 or 4 people out of the however many people who read the book go over there and fall in love with, you know, like we've all done, of going to watch games and learn about what it's all about, then, you know, that's fantastic. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. It came about, I started writing just little reviews on trips that I'd done over to various German grounds for a guy called Danny Last, who used to run the European Football Weekend website. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, but people just post in there like experiences of going and travelling abroad and watching various games. And I just put in a couple of things in there and thought I'm really enjoying doing this and explaining about the situation over there. So I just carried on writing reports on trips, and then I thought, well, maybe, you know, it builds into something more. And what I wanted to do was, I didn't feel I could write a whole book just on the history, and I thought it would be quite dry. So I wanted to mix in my experiences, going over with a little bit of the history as well, and try and balance the two. And it was hard to do because my experiences are mine, and everybody else has had their own amazing times over there. And the reason that we all keep going back is because it is so much fun, and you meet so many like-minded people, and it's so I don't know, just rewarding to be over there. But everybody's experience is different. So that part of it, the bit about me is literally just how I've experienced it. And I appreciate everybody here probably could tell a similar story. I think we've all, putting words in people's mouths, but a lot of people have fallen out of love with football in this country. That's how I started. I grew up supporting Watford, going with my dad every week for 20 years. I don't know, had kids. Got a bit older, couldn't afford it, got priced out of the game, couldn't afford to, I look how my dad used to take me to football every week. I can't afford to take my 2 girls. The fact that they're not particularly interested, feeds into that, but I couldn't afford to take my family to football in this country. Now, week in, week out, like I used to do. And also, the experience isn't as good as it was 20, 30 years ago. So I was switched off from that, but luckily, like I said, read the thing in 442 and got into St. Pauli. It fitted with my politics, it fitted with so much of what I kind of always dreamt about football being like, really. Just having that experience of being amongst like-minded people and just enjoying the experience of being out there. So I was lucky to find that. That first experience of the Millerntor, the first time you go, is just incredible. And like I said, everyone's got their experience of it. I can remember it was that boiling hot day. It was against Bayer Leverkusen in the cup. Fabian Boll scored in the 87th minute. The place went mental. It was just absolutely fantastic. Got covered in beer. Talked to so many people that it just wouldn't happen. Couldn't believe that people were still in the ground 40 minutes, 45 minutes after the game, drinking. Then they spilled out onto the street outside and carried on. It was just incredible. But at that point, I was very much an outsider. I was very much somebody looking in, kind of experiencing it. And I probably still am. I mean, I only go over 3 or 4 times a year. But over the course of the 6 or 7 years that I've been going, I've just found that I've just got more and more involved. And I think what you notice is that the football actually becomes so, not unimportant, but it just becomes a byproduct of the whole experience. The fact that you can go over now, last time I went over and bumped, with Scott and the rest of the Yorkshire lot, you just meet people that you've met on previous trips, you get chatting with them. We went on the march for the Lampedusa refugees afterwards, which was an incredible experience. The game against Sandhausen was crap, it was 0-0, everyone was bored out of their brains, but we went, 10,000 people marched through the streets of Hamburg for 2 hours afterwards, in support of the refugees over there, and it was fabulous, and that made the experience. And then the next day, with these guys over here, I was fortunate enough to play for them for United Glasgow against the refugees, and that again was just an amazing experience. And that's what it's become. It's become more than the football, more than actually just going and seeing how they're doing. Of course you want them to do well, but actually that is the byproduct. The whole thing is just a community, the values that they represent, and the like-minded people that you're sharing that experience with, and that's what's made it so special. And I can't, I wouldn't swap. I would not swap having a season ticket with a club in England to being able to go over 2 or 3 times a year, because the experience is just fantastic. And if anybody here hasn't been, massively urge you to go. And if you've been, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The other thing that's been fantastic is getting to know these guys. It's strange, obviously, being somebody who comes over once or twice, 3 or 4 times a season to go and watch games, but actually getting to meet other people from the UK who are going to watch games has been fab. These guys, I literally don't know how the Yorkshire lot do it. It's so impressive. I couldn't keep up with their Twitter feed, let alone everything else. I mean, they are so dedicated to it. And just meeting other people like that as well is just really inspiring, because you can just, you can share all of these experiences with them as well. And it's been fab, and we've had some great times going over to games. I don't know if you're aware of the museum project, but they are looking to take over that final section on the new Gegengrade, next to the Fanraum and next to the Van Arden and the FM, and to make it a museum space. It was going to be the police station. I don't think it is going to be now. They're pretty confident it won't be. But they have been fantastic, and Sonka, who many of you might know as Astro on the UK forum, and Christoph, who wrote the kind of like the definitive history of St. Pauli, have helped out massively with this and really reassured me, because the history section, you know, if I'm honest, I'm taking a lot of stuff from German translated sources back into English, and I was uncertain about bits of it. They've gone through it kind of and hopefully picked out a lot of the inconsistencies and stuff. They have been fantastic. I think the project that they're doing to create an archive, to create some way of remembering and recording, you know, the evolution of the fan culture around St. Pauli is really important. Because, like we saw, those of you that were here for the video, things are changing. The place has changed completely since I started going over. You know, the 3 sides of the ground have been redeveloped. The 4th side will be as well. And I can remember that last game of the old Gegengrade when we were over for that. And just being really sad and terrified, having lived through the UK and seeing them change for reasons from those terraces and into the kind of like anodyne all-seater stadiums we've got now. I just thought, God, when we lose the Gegengrade, it's going to be so hard. But actually, they've rebuilt it, and it's just as good. If you've been over there and seen it with 10,000 people standing on it, it's fantastic. So actually, it's not the concrete, it's not the building, it's the people that go and watch. So the museum guys are part of documenting that and part of making sure that we don't lose that. And you know, their support has been great. And what I wanted to do when I wrote this book, I didn't want to. Our publisher isn't here tonight. He was going to come down, but you don't make a lot of money from doing these books. But what I wanted to do was make sure that actually any money that I made from it that goes back into the museum project, because I think it's really important. Their help has been fantastic. And actually, this is a story about community, so it should go back into funding, you know, or helping in some way to get their project off the ground. Because that's still, you know, they're still in the process of funding it all. I think it will happen. They think it will happen. And I'm going to go over to Hambourg and do a thing over there with them. But they have been really fantastic, and they've been through it all and spent hours with emails backwards and forwards making sure we get things right. So a lot of credit to those guys as well. So that's it really. I mean, everybody's got their story of going to watch St. Pauli. They're, you know, and that is just the personal bits in there are just mine. And I do think that, you know, you guys have all got your experiences. So I hope, I said in there as well, I hope that it's not the last book in English about a club, because I think there are people who've been going a lot longer than me, people who know different aspects of it. And you know, it would be good if we had more literature on it, because there is just a massive dearth of stuff about it. I mean, the real source material in English that I got was a guy called Chris Sanderson, who wrote a dissertation on St. Pauli, but his work stopped pretty much around the time of around the time of the club getting into debt and all of that kind of stuff. So there was a gap with that modern bit. So hopefully I filled that a little bit, but the story evolves constantly. You know, there's constant battles, there's constant things to be fought for. You know, look at the Rotiflora thing going on at the moment. You know, it just doesn't stop. So hopefully it'll get more people to write about it as well. All of my profit from it, or my proceeds from it, goes back into the museum project, which I just think is the only way to do it, really, because it sounds romantic in itself, but they've given so much to me in kind of rekindling my faith in football and doing things how I'd want to do it. That it's just nice to be able to like think, well, actually they might get a little bit back from it. So that's it, really. So yeah, thank you very much. I don't know what my favourite sound. Well, no, actually, I do. It has to be the first one. I don't think I've had so many fantastic experiences since, but nothing comes close to that first bit. I felt like a kid again. That moment I stepped. It was the old Gegengrade. I was with my dad, who had taken me to football that first time, like 20, 30 years ago. We walked up, and I don't know, the atmosphere. It was like stepping back in time. It was seeing something that I never thought I'd see again. So, although there's been some amazing things since, just that first moment of seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting the Millerntor was just incredible. I'd spent a lot of time before I actually went, like looking at it on the internet, and you look at clips on YouTube and you think, can it be that good? And you're thinking, I bet it isn't when you're there. And it actually was. It was as, you know, it happened that we scored in the 87th minute and beat by Leverkusen, of course. But the atmosphere was just amazing. So, yeah, that was probably still the best experience. Been downhill ever since. I've seen some shit games as well, I must admit. I don't think there is at the highest level, no. But I can't see it. I think it's too commercial. But I think things like, you know, FC United and Manchester, AFC Wimbledon, all those things are doing things in the right way, and I think those sort of things will, I think they'll grow. I think more clubs will end up having kind of like versions of that. I can't see any way back from, which is sad. It's really sad because it's not the football that I grew up with. But then things evolve, don't they? It's like, I don't know. But no, I can't honestly see, and I think that's why you get drawn so. And that's why you're almost so precious about what's going on at St. Pauli, because you think, God, if that changed, then what? You know, do you go to Altona? Do you know? But actually, if we lose that, it will be. I think sometimes for us English fans, it makes it seeing the grounds change and all of those things are almost worse because we've been through it and we've seen how crap it is now. You know, whereas. Yeah, maybe they have. I don't think it will be the same in Germany. I think it's different because of the ticket prices and all sorts of things. But no, I can't see it. I don't know what other people think. I can't see a way back at the highest level.
It's sad.
It is sad, yeah. Yeah, so the thing is, you can paint in broad brushstrokes, can't you? And I think the easiest thing to do is think, you know, it's like Hansa is the right, Hansa is bad. Yeah. St. Pauli is, you know, the left St. Pauli is good. We saw from the DVD at the start, what did they say about 500 active fans, politically active fans? So you're thinking the USP, and you're thinking maybe a few people along that. You're then looking at the rest of the 29,000 or however many, you know, we can fit in there now, who yes sympathise, but aren't active and perhaps aren't as left wing as the myth portrays. And you've got to assume, I don't know Rostock as well, but you've got to assume that a similar thing happens there. But in the other respect, that actually they've got that hardcore following of kind of right wing hooligan element, but actually the majority of fans there are probably, you know, fairly neutral, the fact that they're not doing anything about it, or the fact that they were cheering when the Rockets were getting fired in at that away game the other year, doesn't do them any favours, admittedly. But I don't think we can paint all of those Rostock fans in that way. I think the blockade was important. The first one that they did, that got the USP in a lot of trouble because they stopped everybody going in, and they got a lot of grief about it. And I think that's when that it was a couple of games after it that video was that film was made, and there was a lot of ill feeling towards them for doing it. I remember watching it on the live stream on the little internet thing, thinking this is amazing. We have got Rostock on this side with no away fans and just a few banners hung up. We've got the whole of the Sudcurve that's empty with St. Pauli fans who actually, you know, politically are completely off. I thought it was really powerful to have a whole empty terrace and a whole empty terrace, and almost that just solidarity of fans against the police and the club's decision to do it. And yeah, it was a real kind of like seminal moment. I think they had put aside the differences and looked at the bigger picture of the future of football, because they were saying, you know, 1 minute it's Rostock fans, what about when we go away somewhere? They could just decide that actually there's too much of a risk, we're not going to be allowed to take any away fans. So it was important. And then there was a second time that they did it. I think that the Rostock fans, I think the club didn't take their allocation that time. I don't think they were banned. And they organised, the Rostock fans organised a march through Hamburg, and the St. Pauli fans organised a voluntary boycott, so you didn't have to go in. And I think they had like a meeting out on the out in front of the stadium, and people were listening to it on the radio and stuff, which avoided that kind of blocking everybody doing it, so you could make your own choice. And again, that's really powerful because it's two sets of supporters that are, you know, coming together despite very different views. And I think there was a lot of trouble with the police that day on the second one. I think they caused a lot of issues, and they ended up doing water cannons and stuff. But it wasn't the two sets of fans; it was the fact that the police were uncomfortable with having two sets of fans outside the stadium. But actually, the state, you know, they weren't interested in having, you know, in any confrontation. So yeah, that is important. It is hard because we shouldn't label, you know, in the same way we can't say, you know, you look at those, you look at the executive boxes, you look at the St. Pauli has to survive, draw from a really broad fan base. Yeah, I mean, I don't get the whole rivalry thing. I don't, you know, I don't hate Rostock. I don't hate Hamburg. You know, it doesn't matter to me in a way. But then I don't live there. I'm not, you know, that's not the. If they could edge towards having a more, you know, I don't know, a less right-wing following, that would be great. But I don't know. There is historically with the teams in the East, there is that problem. So. It's almost why I did it, because I kind of got fed up with reading those kind of surface articles that, you know, and there's a degree of hypocritical thought in there, because that's how I got into it. I picked up a copy in a magazine that said, there's this football club, they're left wing, they've got punks on the terraces, they, you know, they're into, you know, and I thought, great, I want to be a part of this, and I want to go over and experience it. But it never went beyond that. So. It is really difficult, because you do, and I've seen people, you know, I can remember one stag party where I remember seeing them, they were like just dressed in pirate costumes. So there's about 20 blokes, we saw them outside, and then I saw them going into the stand, and they were up in the expensive seats on the new sud curve at the top, whereas we were down in the terraces because we got our tickets through the Fan Laden. There is always that risk, isn't there? It's a very special thing. You kind of want to keep it. You want to make sure, it sounds awful, you want to make sure that people who go are the people that appreciate why we go. But I guess writing about it in English, you've got to take that chance. You know, like I said, I don't know, 500 people might read the book. If 2 or 3 of them from there get into it for the right reasons, then I think that's a good thing. I think there is a permanent battle between that. The people who turn up, who go and experience it, yes, it's great, we can drink beer on the terraces, they probably never go back again. They've experienced something, but actually, you know, we know that from the amount of people that are in here. Some of it sticks, and some of us do go back, and some of us do get further involved in it, and, you know, believe in the politics and believe in all, you know, all of those things. So I think it is about the same. It's a balance in that. So it's difficult to. I don't have any reservations about writing it from that point of view, because I do think people, hopefully, if you're going to bother to read it, you want to delve a little bit further than just that kind of like, that kind of stereotyped article that, you know, that every journalist bashes out when they talk about it. Scott and I talked about almost like making a bingo card of things that you crossed off when you're writing about St. Pauli. You know, you've got to have this, you've got to have part-time police officer Fabian Boll, you know, you've got to have the fact that it's 300 metres from the Reaper barn, you've got to have all of those things. And it's nice to go a little bit deeper, but yeah, I mean, it is always you're going to get people who just go for the experience and don't go back again. But you're also going to get people, you know, like people in here who want to, you know, who want to experience it more. And it's a big commitment, isn't it? You know, even going once or twice a year over to Germany requires, you know, a bit of planning, because the fixtures are a nightmare. You know, you've got to be able to try and get your airfare cheap, all of that kind of stuff. It's not something you do. You know, if you're into it, I think you just have to be kind of quite relaxed about that. So. I think that's at the crux of everything, actually. As a club, they're not, are they? They're the big. I think they've got the biggest selling merchandise, you know, apart from, you know, probably bigger than Bayern Munich around the world. They claim to have however many million fans. You know, the stuff is sold everywhere. Yeah, it's commercialised within an inch of its life, I think. But that's the club. And I do think there is a difference. It's, you know, it's one of those things. When I first went over there, I went in the club shop and thought, oh, this is good. There's all this kind of stuff. And now very rarely you go in there, and if you buy anything, you buy it from the Fan Laden or you buy it from somewhere else. And I do think there's that core fan base who understand that difference. I think the club has to be commercial to be able to survive, even in the second division. They have to have a degree of kind of commercial nous about them. You saw them with talking about the extra layer of executive boxes they put in. You know, that's crap. But then they also built a 10,000 terrace where you can get a ticket for €12, and, you know, 10,000 people are standing watching the game every week. Yeah, I think it's vital to the whole thing. I mean, that DVD sums it up perfectly. You've got the guys in the Nord curve, you know, with their bit. You've got the guys on the Gegengarde moaning about the USP because they drive the singing and all of that kind of thing. I think it is vital that they have all those different groups. I think it does cause conflict, and then it's going into that next level of detail, because when you look at it from the surface, you think, oh yeah, there's this whole broad fan base. They're all singing from the same hymn sheet. There's actually quite a lot of tension between these groups. I do think they all see the bigger picture. Actually, I do think they all kind of want the best for the club. But it's important because, you know, you've got the ultras, the guys on the in the Haupttribüne who obviously they were, you know, 20, 30 years ago they were probably on the terraces. They've moved across to the seats. They've got an important voice to be heard. I think that's one of its strengths, that we've got all of these different groups. And yeah, possibly one of the things that British football is lacking a little bit, that you've got, you know, you don't have that diversity, and it doesn't make it easy. But I think, I think it's really important to have those different voices, because they represent different bits of the support. You know, not everybody wants to stand. When we go, we like to stand in the middle and bounce around a bit and sing, but that's because we go 3 or 4 times a year. Maybe if I was a season ticket holder, I'd want to stand somewhere else and watch a bit more of the football. And you've got to take in all of those people's opinions on it. And I think it's an important thing to have. It's not easy, I do think. I wasn't expecting so many questions. The books that I've got here tonight, and the books we've shipped 150 over to the museum in Hamburg. I bought 250 from my publisher at cost price, which is basically half the £9 that it costs to sell. So any of those 250 that we sell, £4.50 from each book goes back to the museum. So any that are bought tonight, or are bought at the launches in Hamburg, where there's one down in London, or bought directly from me if you want to contact me on Facebook or whatever, £4.50 goes directly to the museum. If they're bought through the internet from the publisher Sportsbooks Limited, we get the usual amount as well. I just urge anybody, if you're not buying one tonight, or you want to recommend it to anybody, get them to buy it directly from the publisher. Just try and avoid Amazon, and kind of just the amount that they take is obscene in terms of book publishing. Actually, if you can't buy it from the publisher, the next best thing to do, bizarrely, is get it from electronically on Kindle, because I think we get 20% of it from there, as opposed to about 10% from the books on Amazon. So if you can buy one tonight, that'd be fab. But because most of the money will go back to the museum, it is just trying to avoid Amazon in this instance, just because it means less money goes back to the club afterwards. It's been an amazing experience, and I wouldn't swap it for anything. I've really enjoyed going over, and anyone who's been, I think, probably feels the same thing, and you do feel quite passionate about it. And I really hope, that's my biggest fear, is that, God, what happens if it changes? You know, what happens if they do lose it? If they do start to, because they see the Premier League model, German football. I don't think they realise how good, they've got a unique product almost now. They've got low ticket prices, they've got massive attendances going around. But if they see that kind of carrot of, Premier League with their TV deals and all this kind of stuff, if we lose that, then it'll be a real shame. And that's what scares me, because I thought I want to keep going. And you think, where do you go if that disappears? Where do you go from there? So, hopefully it won't happen. I do think they do. What I love about the supporters groups over there is they will fight their corner, and that any changes, a bit like, it feels a bit like on the back at the end of the 80s we all kind of rolled over and gave up football here, and there were other reasons for that. It was complicated on the back of things like Hillsborough and all sorts of things like that. But you think the Sky TV deal came in, and that was it. Football was changed forever. Whereas you do feel that the fan groups, and going back to the Rostock thing, I do think fan groups come together, put aside their own differences, and I think they will fight really hard to keep that kind of heart and soul of German football there. That's what I kind of hope, really, because otherwise I'll be a bit lost.